You know, there are so many points in this movie that really border on being self-referential, where they really play on the known importance and enormity of the Gatsby figure in the cultural world. They just come dangerously close to shitting all over the fourth wall, and at some point I just expected them to be like, Gatsby? What Gatsby? Oh, you know, just the Great Gatsby.
Coming soon to theaters near you. Rated PG-13.
Alright, so finally, reviewing The Great Gatsby here. The only good thing about this delay is it's given me a lot of time to mull this information over in my brain and really process my thoughts in the movie. Because coming out of The Great Gatsby, and I love the book. It's one of my favorites. I'm a huge F. Scott Fitzgerald fan. Read a lot of his literature. It's probably the closest that I think, a book has ever come to being perfect. Or just really, things across, entertainment mediums, if literature still counts as entertainment, I think it does. Various Great Gatsby attempts have been made, none very successful, other Fitzgerald adaptations. It just seems like it's a real problem, and I think that's what inspired Baz Luhrman to just go crazy with this adaptation. Going in, I had very mixed feelings, because in some ways I thought the spin that he was putting on it looked like it could work out fantastically and just be amazing and draw all these great parallels. But at the same time, I could see where it could just fail, not work at all, and be hard to watch. And to be honest, I got both of those things during this movie. I walked out of this movie basically thinking I pretty much hated the first half of the movie. There was a point, or at least twice within the first 10 minutes, where I just staring at the screen, mouth agape, whatever, where I just said, what the fuck is going on? At least twice. It was so bewildering and disconcerting, and the style was just so weird. And then I wound up really, really liking the second half of the movie. It still had flaws and wasn't necessarily as great, where the first half was pretty much, it got almost as low as I thought it could from my expectations. The good parts never get quite as high as I thought they could have. Let's take the music for example. A lot of people were kind of confused and not happy about the music selection and the modern music being chosen, but I thought it could really work. Some of it really doesn't. Some of it just completely is just off. And it's very hit and miss, because some of it I think is fantastic. From some artists that I'm not necessarily even in love with, I think, just really make me love certain parts of this movie. Lana Del Rey's Young and Beautiful, I thought was fantastic. Another one, Jack White's Love is Blindness, or the cover of it, really just created this emotional, crazy thing with the visuals and the cross-cutting techniques and just all these great little things that sum up the importance. Because what Fitzgerald does, that I think is amazing about Gatsby, in one way that I think Luhrman gets, and another way not so much, is that he takes something that is decidedly not, when the specifics of the event isn't all that miraculous. Is just kind of an isolated story. Just the story of The Great Gatsby, overall, doesn't feel like it just have a lot of weight. But it does, for some reason. It makes you feel like this is the only thing that matters, and it's just vastly important. And it has a lot of those huge societal critiques and observations that are present. But in the story itself, there's this amazing sense of pertinence and urgency in it that I think Luhrman gets with the modern music, and in the same way that I think he was hoping to draw parallels between modern society, or, society now and society then, and I thought that was perfect, because I think The Great Gatsby translates incredibly well, and that's the reason why it continues to capture readers. But I feel like he employs the techniques that would do that, but doesn't get those connections. This is another thing, is kind of like the subtlety factor, and the thing is, like, Fitzgerald, and I know this is going to sound silly, but Fitzgerald has this way of not being very subtle at all, and being extremely subtle. What I mean is that he basically lays out most of the formula there, and just kind of leaves out like the end result, and lays it on the page, explains what's going on, and basically comes to most of the conclusions. It almost gets there and just leaves you to do the little rest of that connection and bringing it together, and brings you, all of the, 4/5 of the way there, because that's just a random fraction, and just leaves that extra little fifth for you to do. And it's that little omission that makes it all the better, because I guess it's closer to reality, and in a lot of ways just makes you connect yourself with the material even more. But there are some things that are some of my favorite parts of the book. They were going so well on their own, and they really captured just the powerfulness of the imagery that's present in the book, but then just kind of not explains it, but just they say these things out loud that totally just like they're bashing you over the head with it. You got it, and you're like, oh, that's so beautiful, or that's just so amazing, and then they just say it out loud, and it instantly almost ruins it, because you already know, and it just makes it seem so cheesy and just unnecessary, I think is just the best word. It's just totally not needed. Let's talk about performances. Let's just start with Leonardo DiCaprio. I thought he was good. I don't think he was, and a lot of this has to do with there's really weird overdub narration at times that adds to the weird kind of glossy tone of the movie at times. So just another divergence here. So with the music, at times they incorporate George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, which I think is fantastic, and it's one of the pieces of music that I've always associated with the book for kind of obvious reasons. But then they'll just start playing these big, grand, romantic, classical scores in the background, and have these, and I liked a lot of the cinematography and work, but they just have these big sweeping, and just it adds to this tone that totally doesn't work with a lot of the rest of the movie, and just makes it seem very romantic, and it's not using that for commentary or for, I guess, irony of what's actually the book's about, and kind of destroying that image, but just employs it anyway. In that same way, there's a lot of weird overdubs that I don't just seem to throw off a lot of performances. I thought Leonardo DiCaprio was good. There are times where I'm like, wow, that was amazing, and he really just, I forgot he was Leonardo DiCaprio, and he was one of the people I was worried about the most. But I think there are times where he really gets into the role, but a lot of it's just the editing and some of the writing and just the way they overplay some things that I think take away from the greater subtleties of the character. Carey Mulligan runs into the same problem, because I thought, was one of the two most perfect pieces of casting. Her and Joel Edgerton as Tom Buchanan, I thought, were fantastic. There's a line in the book when Daisy gets to Nick's house, and she just says something really airy, and that's like, I guess that's the best way I can describe the way, I read Daisy Buchanan. As soon as I read that, when I was rereading it before the movie came out, I was like, wow, that's totally Carey Mulligan. I think she's perfect. She just totally gave off that kind of just in the clouds distance from things that is just perfect for the character. But that was in the trailer, and then in the movie, they seem to have just changed her voice almost, and she just has this high-pitched, ditzy voice that just changes a lot of her character, and just threw me off. Maybe it was just me, but I really noticed that. I don't know if anybody else did. Joel Edgerton was just perfect for Tom Buchanan. Performance speaks for itself. Thought it was probably definitely the best. Just so good. Tobey Maguire, I think another one that people were worried about. It's not as, quite as good as I thought he could be, or as it should be. It's not as good as it should be, but it's not as bad as I think Tobey Maguire could have made it. I think there are actually times in the trailer I was like, oh, that's not going to work, that in the context of the movie I thought weren't half bad. I mean, for a movie that I'm not in love with, it's a lot to be talking about. I know, I'm sure this review is really way too long. It's just the book pushing its way into the review. And I'm not comparing it point for point. I'm not saying it has to be the same interpretation that I got, but it just feels like an incredibly unbalanced movie. And I close to love the second half, and I really want to see it again, maybe see if, I can just pick something. I'd probably give the first half of the movie a 3 or 4, maybe, and then the second half like an 8 or more, and it's around like a 6-ish, but I feel like that's just because of the first half. Because of the second half, the rating just seems unfair, but I don't know. Some people I've heard that have absolutely loved this movie. They think it's fantastic, and there are people who think it's just the worst, and it's just bastardization of the book, and they hate it. And if you have seen this movie, or you plan on seeing this movie without reading the book, and I will pretty much never say this, just read the fucking book first. Please, for the love of God. Not because I'm saying, like, oh, you shouldn't like this movie because of the book, or you should like this movie because of the book. Because people try to do that, try to defend a movie by its book. I'm just saying you should read it before, because it's The Great Gatsby. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into copious amounts of liquor. Just as Scott intended it.